Right, good evening everyone. Tonight we're going to talk about automation and how it's going to affect the jobs market in the future. Already you've got Amazon has created robots that is able to pack boxes and stack boxes more efficiently than any human being. You've got robots that are picking strawberries with incredible sensitivity, and you have a machine that has been created that can flip and create a burger in under 10 seconds. So there's huge changes underway. In fact, researchers at Oxford University have forecast that in the next 20 years, about 47% of all jobs in the US are going to be automated, which means they're going to be done by machine or robot or whatever. So really what we're going to discuss is how much trouble are we in the jobs market? Is there going to be anything left for us to do? So I'm joined by two of the smartest guys in the room who are going to explain it all to us tonight. So what do you think? Okay. So tell me this. Will heckling be automated in the future?
Yeah.
It's cold outside. Will automation kill all our jobs in the future? What do you think?
Well, I think it's, if you look back a few decades ago, 41%.
All right. Someone with a view is
This is the moment to automate stuff now.
Well, you know what? I think some things are never going to be automated.
Well done.
So just to get back to your question, you know, this projection of 47% of job. I mean, one of the statistics which is quite interesting is that if you look at a few decades back, 41% of the working population in the US was working on producing food. Today, that number is less than 2%.
Really?
So you see already in a few decades, we have shifted 40% of the workforce from producing food to whatever we do today, right? Nobody has seen this as, you know, a big catastrophe or, you know, the world ends, or suddenly we have half of the people of the population unemployed. So I think what is happening today is that, you know, the world is changing at a faster pace than it used to, you know, to change. Why? Because, you know, we have more people on Earth, and we have more technology, and with Moore's law, everything is exponential. So the progress of change is much faster than it used to be. But the good news is that the new generation, which is sitting in this room, has actually been used to a faster rate of change. So the net, I mean, I don't know how it's going to net out, but basically I think the population is changing, things are, you know, happening faster, but people are more used to change. So what's going to happen is like there's going to be a skill shift. You know, clearly went from people making food to working in you know, industry and then services, and now we have more and more people working on these technologies. So obviously you're going to have different jobs and different skills, but it doesn't mean that half of the world is going to be unemployed.
Right, okay. What do you think?
Well, I think the way we should see that is not so much like, is it going to destroy jobs or not destroy jobs, and how many jobs it's going to destroy, because no one has any clue, actually, of what it's going to do to the job market. So I tend to agree with Philippe that essentially it's going to be more like a shift of skills than destroying jobs. And I think we have this question all the time, right? So if you think back of like the first car, the Ford T, you know, when it came out, essentially people were thinking like, okay, it's going to destroy jobs because people riding horses are going to lose their job. And they tried to regulate everything and say the 40 should not exceed, like, I think it was 30 kilometers an hour or something like that,
Right.
because otherwise it's going to compete with horses, right? And people are going to lose their job. So if you look at history, you had two types of countries, right? You have people embracing change, and they became like the biggest car manufacturers in the world, and that's maybe Germany and the US and Japan, and people fighting change, and those became like, you know, countries that did not develop as quickly. So I think the reality, and, you know, for people in this room, essentially, it's not really, is it going to happen? It is going to happen, for sure.
When,
right?
I mean, how far away are we from this happening? I mean, But you see bits of it happening now, as I was saying about the robots, flipping burgers and that sort of thing. I mean, is it just around the corner, or are we talking 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road before this really happens?
And I think it depends on what sector, but let's talk about cars, right? So we just talked about the 4T. So today you have the Google self-driving cars driving around the Bay Area in California, and I think they've done like millions of miles of the car driving alone. Now, is that around the corner? I think it is actually, right? So it's not going to be all over the place overnight. It might take like 5, 10, 15 years, but the technology is here. You have, if you drive 101 between San Francisco and Palo Alto, you see cars driving empty, passing you. And now what's really interesting, if you think of the evolution of the car specifically, so we've been focusing on building cars initially. Then we've been really focusing on safety in the car in the last sort of 10, 15 years. So now you have, I don't know, like 20 airbags in a car, and it becomes almost impossible to kill yourself in a car. But now the challenge is the car is actually killing people, right? So now we need to get to a point where you automate the car so that the car will be self-aware. And if you have like a young kid actually crossing the street, actually if you have a self-driving car, it might stop immediately.
Right.
You save a life. Right,
Okay.
you save even like on healthcare insurance and all that stuff. If you have like a human behind the wheel, the kid is going to die. So I think it's we also need to think of like all the sort of all the progress that's going to come with automation of things like cars and other things. So I think again we're asking the wrong question when we think about like at time T. We have no idea what's going to be the effect of automation of cars or any other things. And we also need to think of like all the benefits we're going to create for society through automation.
Right. Okay. I suppose as a journalist, I mean, I'm gently crapping myself by the fact that you have magazines like Fortune and newswires like AP have already started to automate a lot of, what they do, whether it's producing news reports or crunching company earnings reports, that sort of thing. That's already happening. It's already been done by robots and it's already automated. I suspect it's pretty crap, but, I always wonder, is this going to change my job? Is it going to get rid of my job? Although I suspect robots aren't going to go down to underground car parks and get given, dossiers of files and stuff to turn into good news stories. But there are plenty of other sectors that I suspect are really ripe for automation. As you were saying earlier on, agriculture, that we've already had that revolution there where so many people have moved off the land and mechanization has improved the efficiencies. I'm just wondering what you think. What are the other sectors that are most susceptible to automation taking the role of humans?
But so the interesting thing is you present it as, robots are designed to take the jobs of humans. I don't see it that way. I think technology, because it's not only robots, because, hardware has been existing for a long time. It's about the artificial intelligence and the big data engine to enable that artificial intelligence that are really new and changing what these robots can do. And I think what is really exciting is to think it's not about these robots doing something that someone is doing today, is these robots enabling us to do things that we couldn't do in the past. So let's take the example of drones, for example, in agriculture. So today now we can send basically automatically a drone over a field with sensors that are able to understand which part of the field have captured the the CO2 that they need and all the ingredient that the component needs, and then you can use that to basically direct your fertilizer where your crops really needs it, right? And that's not something that a human was doing before, just something that was not done before. I mean, another area that I particularly like is about health. Like today we talked about connected health. I'm sure a lot of you, are carrying, some form of device to measure your step or your heart rate. We saw that with the Apple Watch. But I think that is just the beginning of what's happening in the health revolution. And if you picture 20 years from now, I'm sure everyone will carry a device which in real time will be able to analyze all your vitals and be able to prevent heart attack, for example, or tells you if you need this type of drugs right now or if you're feeling sick, etc. And that is not replacing anyone's job. I think it's just new technology that are going to enable the human race to do things that were not possible before.
Right. And I mean, looking at you from your sector, I mean, with driverless cars, I mean, I would have thought being a taxi driver is probably the worst career choice in the history of the universe at this stage. I mean, what do you think? Where do you think how's that going to affect your industry?
No, it might. I mean, our industry is a bit different actually because we don't really replace taxi drivers by any stretch because we allow people to travel actually between cities, so pretty long distance. So for us, it's almost irrelevant because what we end up doing is we put 3 or 4 people in a car driving from, let's say London to Manchester in the UK. And the fact that someone is driving the car for us is actually irrelevant, right? So what we do is we allow 3 or 4 people to share a space between 2 cities and share the cost of driving between these 2 cities. So in a way, if they could share that in a self-driving car, it would be completely irrelevant. And BlaBlaCar would be doing as well, actually, in a paradigm of self-driving cars. But maybe to go back to the point of like how it's going to change the job market, I think in a way, I mean, if you think of it, the job market has already changed, from maybe our parents' generation to our generation to the next generation. And I think someone who puts that pretty well is Reid Hoffman, who's the founder of LinkedIn. He was one of the first employees of PayPal. And he was saying that essentially in Silicon Valley, they went from a model of employment to employability, right? And he says like essentially at this stage and for the next generation, you're not going to find companies promising any kind of employment for life, which was the case, back like 50 years ago. If you worked for Ford, if you worked for Volkswagen, if you worked for, Deutsche Telekom in Germany, you expect employment for life. So I think the reality today, it's going to be about employability. And as an employer, you should provide training to your employees so that, in fact, if there's a machine doing part of your job better, then you should be trained to run the machine, and so on and so on. So today, and especially for like the younger generation, the reality is they're not going to have one job. They're probably going to have like 10 jobs and 5 different careers. And that's the main change.
And I suppose I know we're tight for time, so last question would be, where is the growth area? What are the growth areas going to be? Where should you be looking for a job now as a result of the changes?
I think the answer is BlaBlaCar. Well, I think to your point, I think a lot of the jobs and the way they are evolving, I think, we're moving from lifelong employment to more of a, contract employment. So we don't hire you in this company for your lifetime, and it's going to be your home, and we're all friends. We're saying we hire you for this mission, and that mission may last 3 months, it may last 5 years. And so you need to find the job where you'll be the best at accomplishing a specific mission that's going to be relevant to a company. And the good news is that with all the technology that we have out there, now you can work remotely. And you will, I think if you look at the evolution of the workforce, we'll move from fixed labor contracts to very flexible labor contracts. And I think that to enable that, we also need a shift in the legislation, because all the legislation and the social protection, especially in Europe, is based around lifetime contract, and that really will need to change.
And just to add on that, I mean, essentially today, I mean, work in technology. I mean, today we need to embrace technology. And look at this place. I mean, this conference was like a tenth of the size just a few years ago. Now we're talking about 40,000 people coming to Dublin to talk about the web and to talk about technology. And
to have a pint, which I think we should probably go off and do now.
Let's do that. I'm just automated.
Thanks very much for listening to us, guys. Right. Sorry. Hello.